And if you consider the South African boys who stay at home, and again, it's no one's fault, but they have to have this rest, and it's obligatory that they have a rest period. We had 2 weeks off over Christmas. In other words, we played on 23rd, didn't play the 31st, and didn't play the first weekend. It made logical sense to me to give them 5 weeks of a block where there's two no games. So. But I'd like to obviously get the best players playing every time we play in these big games and get them to be part of it. I look what Andre Pollard does to Leicester, for Leicester, and he, he's a World Cup winner. But as you can imagine, we have Pony, which is a player of national interest, gets money paid to the unions in our block, and part of that is that we have to then rotate and rest players according to the director of rugby in South Africa. So. Hopefully, and again, we're jumping the gun. I'm hoping going forward that we can do enough planning to know that these games, the best players will be available.
You're in a strong position to pull now as well in terms of qualification.
Yeah. Well, look, the destiny's in our own hands now. We got Bordeaux at home, and we win that game. We probably definitely end in the top 2, which is a great way, for us to go into the next round of games. Also, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we can't play a semi-final. South African side can't host a semi-final, so we chose Ashton Gate as our home ground. So it's quite ironic that we win here. If we get to win at Loftus, and we end up playing 2 home games at Loftus, the next game would be at Ashton Gate again. So it's probably who knows? Maybe the stars are aligned.
Why can't you have a semi-final?
Just the way that I think we're not shareholders of the EPCR yet, and we're not shareholders of URC. I think that still takes some time. I think once, I'm not sure when it kicks in, but as non-shareholders, it's got to be based. The finals got to be, or semi-finals got to be based in Europe, I think.
Right.
Everybody happy? And did you pick Ashton Gate because obviously you've been here by then?
Yeah, well, I picked Ashton Gate because there were a couple of options, and I thought big stadium. A lot of people. Obviously we get half the gate or whatever. Number one, number two is I really think it's a nice field. I think it's a great stadium. And I probably did also, to be fair, knew that chances of getting Bristol again in the rest of the competition would be minimal. And it can still happen, I'm sure, but. Chances of playing them now and then in the semi-final is highly unlikely. So, out of all the choices we had, we chose Ashton Gate.
Do you prefer South Africans being in this tournament or Super Rugby? What is
Yeah, look, I've been, as you know, I've been around a long time. So I was with Super Rugby as well. I probably prefer this. I prefer just it's different. I think the Super Rugby got. And I say this with respect because I was part of it from right in the beginning when I was with the Lion Transvaal side in those days. 1996, when like Super 8, Super 10, Super 12. And to be fair, I think it probably once it got to conferences and you didn't play each other, and I think it lost a little bit of the spark it was when it started the competition. So this is new. Get a chance to play in the Investec Champions League. It's the best club tournament in the world, like football, and you guys would know, which is very different to our football players in the UK. Change clubs if their club doesn't get into Champions Cup football, and I'm sure rugby is going to become the same. Players are going to want to be. That's why I'm so disappointed that the best players. I'd love World Cup winning Springboks to be part of this, because this is like they know how nice it is to play in big crowds against the best players. So I prefer. Sorry, I know. Right? I prefer this. I prefer where we are now.
Is that a sort of conscious decision for them to miss these 2 weekends, or could they have changed?
Yeah. Well, it was a conscious decision based on the fact that I have to give them 5 consecutive weeks, and I looked at our program and thought that if they're not going to play the last weekend of last year and the first weekend of this year, then I might as well. That's two fixtures that I can definitely save them. It just so happened that it was 2 European Cup games after that. Then we got the Lions. So, yeah, it was as I said, nothing untoward about the tournament, nothing untoward about playing away against Bristol. No disrespect to anybody. It was. I've got to actually, in effect, so something else which has to happen is all the other players have to have 8 weeks off consecutively before the Currie Cup as well. So there's a lot of other juggling that's going to happen between now and June, where I'm going to have to rest some of these players for 8 consecutive weeks. No, they can train, but they're not allowed to play, and they've got to have 3 weeks completely off.
Jake, do you think that's a consequence of South Africa being in this tournament? Would be joining the Six Nations? So
Yeah.
what's the impact?
I'm an old school guy. I can't see that you can ever have South Africa playing Six Nations. I mean, when I look back at those games, and we find memories of a guy like J.R. Williams who passed away. I mean, I can't see South Africa playing in a Six Nations tournament. That. I mean, I don't know. So many things have changed in rugby. Hopefully, we'll hang on to the fact that Six Nations are for the Six Nations that play in the north. Once you start bringing in South Africa, what's to stop you from bringing in New Zealand and Australia and all that sort of thing? Then it's not the Six Nations. So, as an old school guy, I hopefully that won't happen. Probably get killed for saying that back home, but anyway.
Can I just ask you one quickly about Cameron Haddock?
Yes.
Press speculation.
Yes. That's why I didn't bring him with today.
I mean, is that something you heard? Are you
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, I chatted to him. I mean, he's obviously, I think his grandmother is Welsh. And, I spoke to him about it. I mean, he's obviously just hit the scene. He's played really well. And that isn't why I didn't bring him. I wanted to rotate. He'll probably play next week. And, it's like anything. I see there's a winger that's playing in the UK now. I think he's playing for one of the teams that are eligible for Wales and for England. I think for Exeter. Yeah. And that's no different. I suppose they've got to make the decisions only based on the fact either they get picked or don't get picked. It's easy to say I'm not available, but, you first got to be selected. So, but he's a talent. He's a real good talent. He was the player of the tournament, I think, even for the whole tournament when he was an under-20 player in that competition. Not just South Africa's best player. I think he was the player of the tournament. So he hasn't just arrived from nowhere. He's been coming through the ranks.
Does he have any contact with Wales?
I'm not sure. I really think unlikely because I think he would have told me. So at this point, I would think it's highly unlikely that he's had any contact. I mean, the closest was when we played in Cardiff. He was on the bench and he sat next to Warren Gatlin, who sat 2 seats away from him. So, yeah.
Ashfaq online.
Thanks, Lunga. Hi, Jake. Congrats on the win there. Tense even at halftime, you had all that scrum dominance and maybe just the last pass and breakdowns you couldn't convert into points. But second half, it came nicely together and the guys were rewarded for their endeavor with ball in hand.
Yeah, the interesting thing is halftime I said to the players, why don't we play the way we do when the whistle goes? I mean, there was one passage of play where there was a line out, we carried on playing. It looked like our best passage of play. So my message at halftime was, don't go in your shell now, start playing. I mean, every time we hold on to the ball and every time we attack the defense, we seem to, be asking good questions. So I'm glad that the second half, the players felt a little bit more comfortable on our attack.
And especially the fact that they won away from home as well. I mean, it was a good performance against Leon and you just fell short there. So this must give the guys a lot of confidence going forward in this competition and URC.
Well, I just said to the other journalists here, I mean, the away wins are, they're premium. You look at the results today and not many away sides win. Even in any competition, never mind, this Champions Cup. So away win and to get a bonus point is something that we'll obviously, enjoy. But, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We've got Bordeaux, who's obviously played really well this year, and we've got them next week in Atlanta.
Just one more from me, Jack. Devin Williams, player of the match. You rested Valley and Kainen and Curtin, all of them, but then he produces a game like that. Just a word on him.
Yeah, I think everyone knows he's a great talent, and I'm so glad that he comes in and every time we ask him to step up, he does it. And what it does, it creates pressure, it creates competition in positions. I mean, Valley's a World Cup winner twice. Now he's got a younger guy that's putting pressure on for his position. So, I think any coach will tell you when you have that sort of competition and you have that sort of competitive, one or the other, it makes it so much better for your team.
Thanks, Ashfaq. Kobus.
Thanks, Lunga. Jake, I think in the beginning of the season, you said there's a few youngsters that will need to make a step up this season. And if you look at the performances of Gerhard Steenekamp and Jan Hendrik Wessels, Reinhard Ludwig, this evening, it seems that they listen to you.
Well, Kobus, 21-year-old hooker, 21-year-old tight head lock, calling the lineouts. I've said it to you many times. We're very young still. We're still far away from where we want to be. But when you get results like that and you get a performance like that as a collective, I'm sure it's going to help us build for the next couple of years as well. I mean, there's no ways that they won't improve over the next couple of years. So I'm really, really proud, not only of those names you mentioned, but the way that the whole team gelled tonight.
And just on Harold Foster, he really came into his own that second half, and I think he had a hand in 2 of the tries after halftime.
He played really well. Even took those kickoffs. I mean, sometimes what we've tended to do in the last couple of games and the last couple of seasons, every time we've scored, we've either made a mistake from the kickoff. So him catching those kickoffs as well as he did, and then creating pressure and helping us get out of our half was obviously important as well.
Thanks, Kobus.
Thanks,
Jan?
Jake. Thanks, Lunga.
Jake, sorry, I think you answered it earlier. I just want to clarify. Obviously, you got a shootout with Bordeaux next week back home. Does this impact on your selections for next week, or are you still resting the guys?
Oh, no. Well, I'm glad you asked that, Jan. You're actually not allowed to change your mind because if you change your mind, you start the 5-week process again. So it's not a case of 4 weeks, and then if you want to bring them, you can then give them another week later. I mean, the bottom line is it's got to be 5 consecutive weeks. So even if you've got an injury and you wanted to bring someone in, you're not allowed to. I mean, you can, well, then you got to give them another 5 weeks later on in the season. So it's not going to influence any of our planning. Only the injuries, and there are a couple of bumps and bruises. I mean, the tight head prop will go low, and obviously that'll have to have a look and see how he pulls up this week. And while I'm on the injuries, I think it's important. I just have one thing that I think we need to look at. We lost a player for blood, and we weren't allowed to put another guy on. And I just didn't understand. Our doctor is not really happy because he said blood. They apparently have a meeting before the game. They have a meeting about what is the protocols. And the more we said blood, the more we played with 14 men for a period of time until the game stopped. So again, it's something I'm going to have to look at. It's something, that, as I said, away from home, or maybe an EPCR, or maybe whatever, we got to find a way in which we're a bit more streetwise on keeping the player on the field, or making sure the substitutes on the field before we commence the game, because we played for a long period there while they were trying to score from their own half with 14 men.
Yeah. You partly answered the other question around injuries. Wilco's injury, what is his injury?
I think it's his AC. Yeah, I think I know it's his AC. At this point in time, I'm not sure the extent of the AC injury, but one of those things is just got to wait and see when we get back home, do some scans and see what it means.
Yeah. And are you happy with the depth you have at tight end at the moment?
Well, I thought Kuta played really well for a guy who's, literally just joined us this season. He has been out for a long time. He played well. Mornay Smith's still available. And then, I think we've got 1 or 2 other players coming back that are obviously can play tight end. So, we should be okay.
Thanks, Jake.
JJ, close us off.
Hi, Jake. Congrats on the win. One pleasing thing about today's match was definitely the scrums. I think you completely dominated them, and it ended up uncontested scrums where they had 13 men on the field. I know Devon got the man of the match award, but I think the scrums is where the Bulls actually won this game today.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, and we did say before the game, without Ellis Genge and without Carl Sinclair, it was an area we were going to target. So to get a return like that at scrum time is obviously very pleasing. And especially the fact that we lost Wilco in the first half and still managed to build pressure. So yeah, the old adage, forwards win the game. The back's determined by how much. And today, I suppose it's exactly what happened.